So this is recording offline and everything.
Whatever.
You were saying the camper series is so popular.
Yeah, so the camper series is so popular that I love writing it. I enjoy every bit of it. But what they love most is Southern, the Southern stuff, the Southern sayings, the quirky characters, and they kind of like the small romance, right, between the sleuth. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not necessarily writing to market because I don't want to write to market to what's popular with, and that's with what, the genre is. And, mainly that's like the baking characters, whatever the character is, the book librarian or the knitter. And so I knew that having the camper or girl that owns a campground is not cozy, right? So when I decided, what do I want to do now? Then I want to write something that I love to read, which I love to read cozies during the holidays. So okay, well, why don't I just do a holiday series and not necessarily write it to the public, but since I love my Patreon, I want to give them more because they're paying for it. And although the money that they pay me goes to a charity each month, I still want them to, have say or whatever in that. So what I did is, like, instead of writing to market, I wrote to market to Tonya. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take one of the secondary characters that they don't really love her, but they like her and tolerate her enough that they're like, okay, well, she has a good subplot. And I'm going to pluck her out. Like, she's just enough that you're like, oh my gosh, that she was kind of friction with all of the other characters in the camper series. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to pluck her out and stick her in any town, USA. And I'm going to make it called Holiday Junction. And it's going to have all the things I love. It's going to be by the mountains and it's going to be by the sea. So I can write both. And so, maybe I should call it North Carolina, but
there you go.
I just have it called Holiday Junction. I've never once mentioned a state. I've never once. And then I'm like, okay, and then what am I going to do that my readers love? And I'm going to write a character with quirky characters around holidays that they love. But how am I going to bring the Southern to this little town? Because it can't all be in Kentucky. So what did I do is I brought her mom along after she gets settled in this town. Now her mom is there, who is Southern to the core, has the quirky sayings, has the quirky traditions that we all have. Just the Southern manners, and things have to be just so, but she fumbles up enough to, this, that, and the other, a little nosy, done nosy in her daughter's life. And so I made it to where also she kind of, there's also in the town something called the Merrymaker. And so you don't know who the Merrymaker is, but in each holiday, which is each book, they have to plant these little clues around the town. It's a whole thing with each holiday. And so my girl, actually, the reason why she can't leave the town in the first book is because she stumbles upon this 200-year-old secret that she's totally put in jeopardy. And they're like, okay, now you're the Merrymaker. And so she's like, oh my gosh. So now she in the books is the secret in all the books, that everybody's trying to figure out who the Merrymaker is, which, but they won't. But that's besides the mystery part of the book, which the mystery is the main part. But those are all the kind of the subplots. And at the end of each book, she's also a journalist. So that's why she's going. So they obviously need a new journalist in the town. The paper's dying, this, that, and the other. And so at the end of each newspaper, or at the end of each newspaper, there's a Merrymaker article. So, and it's always been given anonymously. So now she can just freely write it. So every book ends in an article from the Merrymaker. It kind of foreshadows the next. So what I do is I write it, and I maybe write 600 to 1,000 words a day in it. And I give it to Patreon every day, like a daily serial.
So how do you just write it and they get it unedited?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And so I'm like, it's unedited, blah, blah, blah. And so, by the end of however many long, the story's written, and I just, keep the document going, and then I will send that off to an editor. And then it goes up. So, you know, it goes up after it's been through the editing process, the ARC team and all those kind of things. So that's how I started that series. Really, it was for the love of just giving my readers something that was just for them on that Patreon group.
Yeah, just something a little special.
Yeah. So just something special. That's about it.
Yeah.
So it works out and I love it. And like right now we're doing Halloween and soon we'll be doing Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I have one for New Year's. And my cover artist just keeps on giving me the covers for them. And I'm like, oh, perfect. Bloop,
Is that Mariah? She does those covers too?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I got the rights back to my dressmaking series. So
congratulations.
Yeah, stupid fucking Henry Press. Still, I'm going to edit that part out.
Yeah, oh, I'm with you.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I have, per my contract, I mean, I've taken those books off. These are the Lollicers off of my site. I do not promote them. I do not do anything for them. And they're grouped in, though, then this was my agent's fault. She just wrote a really bad contract. And so the first 3 are grouped as one work and the second 2 are grouped as one work. So they have to sell under a certain amount of money or under a certain number of copies as a group. So I'm like, oh my gosh. But the second 2 did over a period of 4 quarters. So the second 2, I mean, sorry, the last 2 did. And he's still fighting it. We asked in November, you know, and said, okay, it's sold less than $250 for these 2 books. It's pathetic. And he still, and it's in the contract, and he still won't. He said, those numbers are not my numbers. I'm like, well, what the fuck? What numbers do you have? What numbers do you use? I don't know. And then he doesn't answer, you know?
Well, I think if his company makes under a certain amount and they can't keep books on their site, then they have to fold or they can't be a business, and then things would have to happen. But I mean, I paid $48,000.
I know. Oof. Yeah. I kept them going for a while, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know. I'm just like, oh my God, it just makes me so mad. But you know, I blocked them. I didn't promote it. And they sent me a letter from their attorney saying, you know, per your contract, you need them on your website, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't. Sue me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. They've never said anything like that.
Now, that was years ago. So, yeah, he's just a jackass.
He is. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I just don't, I mean, I guess they're not taking any new contracts, are they?
I have no idea. I mean, I just want to get the hell out of there, which is proving to be impossible. But I don't, you know, I'm probably going to reach out to that lawyer that you referred me to if he continues to just ignore us and say that his numbers are different. I mean, I have the royalty statements to prove it. So I don't know.
He sent them to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how you have different numbers than what you actually sent me. It's ridiculous.
Right.
But I have a new agent now, and Holly is my old agent. And, you know, I mean, she has no motivation. I've been with her since the beginning.
Who is your new agent?
Her, Margaret Danku with Irene Goodman.
Okay. So she's not fighting for you because she doesn't have skin in the game, right?
Right. Well, Holly's still fighting for those rights because
Holly who?
Holly Root with Root Literary. I've been with her since the beginning. But yeah, she makes nothing from these books, but she's still fighting because we've been in this for so long. Like, I was one of her first clients when she went out on her own from, well, she was with Trident first and then Waxman, but you know, she's not fighting that hard. So you know, I'll probably have to.
I just fired my agent last week.
I know. So did you do anything with the agent?
I mean, no. Well, the only reason that I had her is because HarperCollins had said, "Oh, try this agent." I'm like, okay.
That's for your Ghostly Endeavors books.
No, I had Curtis Brown for that agency, and then he left. So then I'm like, okay, what do I do now? And they're like, oh, go with Jill Marshall. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just messaged her, and she's like, yeah, I'll take you. Of course you will, because I gave you some money. Yeah. But then I kept her because of the Hallmark deal, right? And I thought, oh, I need her for that. And then I didn't take the deal, so I didn't need her for that. then this whole mass market thing is new. And so I knew I didn't want to use her for that if it comes through. So I got rid of her before anything happens with it. So,
wow.
Mm.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it is. It's a hard business, you know, and I just like, you know what? I'll just I just am doing what I do for myself.
I know. And you're doing an amazing job. Okay, let's start so I can actually.
Whatever it is you want me to talk about.
Okay.
I didn't prepare anything. Just because there's so much up there, I just talk.
I know. Well, and you're so good at that, about being articulate. But okay.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Hi everyone. I am Melissa Bourbon with Writer Spark, and I'm here today chatting with my old good friend Tonya Kappes, superstar author Tonya Kappes. Welcome.
Hey, you know, I think I'll have to bring that up. I'll have to bring it up. But I still have the paper where Jack made us sign when he was little that said 2 famous authors. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh
I have that. I still have that. It's in the basement. I don't have it up here. It's in my filing cabinet. I'll have to get that out and send you.
Yeah. So because we go way back to before my early days of
you published, and I was not.
And you were not published yet.
Yeah. No, like I always say that you gave me my start with marketing because I somehow found Chasing Heroes and started following it as a blog. And just commenting. And then you said, hey, would you want to guest blog? I'm like, sure. I don't know what I'm going to guest blog about because I don't have a book published. And then, you know, a few months later, you asked me to join the blog. And that's how I got started with
the rest is history
and readers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a good friendship came out of it. So,
yeah. Well, and an amazing career.
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. I mean, you guys had a ton of followers. You know, and they just trusted me and been with me since. It's been crazy.
Okay, so that leads me into today we're just going to chat about your processes and your system and how you turned, you know, an interest in writing, kind of, you know, just I would like to be a writer, into the amazing business that you have developed. Because, you know, there are a lot of writers out there, myself included, who have a passion and we write books. But, you know, I wouldn't say that I have turned my writing into a true business in the way that you have. And so I'm just curious, and I know that other people will be too, about, you know, what does that look like? What is Tonya Kappes' books sort of all about, and how did that happen?
So I knew that I'm really good at, you know, talking to readers, and I'm really good at communicating with readers and things like that.
You're gifted at that.
I'm gifted at the gab of talking.
Truly gifted, yes.
I mean, I got the superlative in high school years ago, most talkative and this, that, and the other. So, you know, I always have been able to talk to somebody and just kind of be personable, and what you see is what you get. It's not any more than that. And so I knew that when social media came on the scene that I would be able to do something with that. So taking even like the blog post that we did together years ago, I would ask reader questions. Like at the end, I'd ask a question because we always wanted them to comment back. So I started taking those questions at the very beginning and just taping myself. I'm like, oh, a reader question was sent in by so-and-so. And I would always just leave like the last name off or whatever. And then I started putting those up on YouTube just as reader questions. So way back then, I think I have years of YouTube content back there.
So you were really an early adopter of all of that, authors on social media like that.
And then I started answering the reader question live on like Facebook, and people would pop in on the lives because at that time, you know, Facebook was telling people somebody's live, or, you know, and they might not have been following me. And so I really started connecting with them by doing live events and just kind of keeping that going. And then I noticed that more and more people were coming, and I would only do it once a week. So then I noticed more and more people were coming onto social media. So that's when I kind of came up with my social media system. I have various systems for each Tonya Kappes umbrella pillar. And so, I mean, I have something for all my books that are coming out, like specific marketing strategies for those, specific marketing strategies for Facebook, specific marketing strategies for my newsletter, for Goodreads, for YouTube. Everything has a specific strategy, even my ARC team.
And
so
these are strategies that you learned from other people, developed, trial and error along the way, kind of a combination. I mean, how did you go about developing these strategies?
Probably just like combination, but mainly just thinking to myself, oh, okay, well, kind of like my mystery train. Like I had an idea from an email when a reader said, hey, when you going to come visit me and my town? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And then another one came and another one came and another email came. And that's when I thought, well, maybe I can just host one event somewhere differently each year. And whoever lives close to there can make it an event. And although events have been around forever and book signing events have been around forever for authors, I'm like, and I could, do a book signing, but, since I'm not traditional, then I would have to host a book signing off site. And, oh, while we're in that town, they have a ghost walk. Maybe we can do a ghost walk. And so it just kind of snowballed right from there. And so it was a combination of everything that has kind of happened. So with social media, I always have on my desktop, I keep a folder for every month. And so today, if you were to get on my Facebook page, every morning I put a coffee post up. And if you were to get on there today, this time last year, the same date the year before last, the same date the year before that, it has, July 28th, and you would see it's the exact same coffee post from the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But when you open up my folder, you'll see 31 coffee posts labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the 10th is the 10th day. So also I put books on sale every week. So I have those books. The same books are on sale this week that were on sale last year at this time. So it's labeled week 4, July, and books on sale.
So you already have your graphics, everything that's in there.
Everything. I have a running not even a Google document, but just like a running July document with those links in it. So it's just a copy and paste. Now I have an assistant. I've had an assistant I have 3 assistants besides Eddie. And so one of them always funnels out my book links and sales graphic to other cozy groups, owners of various cozy marketing groups and things like that. And she also runs my private Facebook page. So she's in there with those, but we'll get to that, later. But the same content that I did for Facebook back in the time is now repurposed for Instagram or anything, you can think of that you would want to put at Twitter or whatever you're using. So it's not like I am redoing content. It's content that I already had that a lot of writers don't realize that they have. So, they get on social media, even if they don't have a million books out or even one book out, they get on social media, they've got posts on there somewhere. And so those posts can be redone. Like if they're like, oh, I asked in my group, a question, they can, turn that question to a million different pieces of content. So for instance, during the pandemic, I started reading what I called bedtime stories. And so we were just trying to be a community, right? And so I started reading a chapter a night of my books, and those were going up on YouTube as well. So my YouTube content just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then what happens is we read Beaches, Bungalows, and Burglaries, and I love to hike and camp and things like that. So we will go to a nature center around here, and I'll just sit there and film, 10 minutes of me hiking. And so a very popular thing is video right now. So what I do with those old videos of me talking, I just take the voice out and put it to maybe a 60-second clip, like just a clip of the audio, and put on a 60-second or a minute, 30-second, whatever clip of me walking through the woods. And it's a snippet of my book. And then it's a video that people have connected with, on, the walking through the woods or something like that. But all those things are put in. So like if I do something new like that, it's put into that July file.
So I know that you were a teacher before writing BW, Tonya. Did you have that type? Is that how your brain works? Like, did you have that type of system, development in place as a teacher? Because I don't think that the average person, and especially writers who are creatives, right, don't necessarily think in those sort of logical, systemic ways.
Right. And so that is what has served me best, is that I do believe that, so when I was teaching, I always knew that each child learned differently, and you get this, I was a public school, so you get this curriculum that, just teach the curriculum, but you really can't if you're a good teacher, you just can't teach the curriculum.
Right.
Our kids learn separately. So I would keep a file of each kid and each child, not kid, I guess, but each child, and I knew that they would learn differently. So I always kept those notes in their file. So I could, if anybody came in that day to substitute, they would be able to pull out the file if they really wanted to dig down deep or whatever. And they would be able to help that child. If that child had a problem with something, they could be like, oh, okay, I see here, And so in my brain, that's the way I treat each social media or each part of my business is like its own child, and what works well and what resonates well, and what gets me the most mileage. And so I'm all about the repurpose of the content, right? So I know if one child, generally a couple children learn the same in your classroom. So what you learn or how you teach one child that is kind of on that same way. You can hear my cuckoo clock. Sorry.
That's okay.
Is that, so I knew that I could kind of put those two kids together, and, it's just kind of like, being smart about the stuff, not, working, harder and saying, oh, I've got to work with this child and I got to work with this child. Oh, well, these kind of can be paired up because I know that they kind of, work the same. So,
do you schedule all your social media?
I do. So, so back to the social media part, we'll just talk social media. So then I know that every day is like a theme day. So every day is, every Monday I'll do something with my newsletter. Every Tuesday is Tail Wagging Tuesday. I get a lot of photos of my readers. But I get a lot of photos of my readers because my assistant knows that I do Tail Wagging Tuesday. So she is in the reader group posting, show me a picture of your fur baby today or something like that. So we're looking for, them. And then Wednesday is sometimes Wednesdays vary. It's like follow me or this, that, and the other. And then Thursday is always a grateful, thankful post because I think that that's so important to have out there. And then Friday is what are you reading Friday? What are you reading for the weekend? Something like that. So I keep all of those posts in that July file or that monthly file. Also, I did something that's so much easier for me and my assistant is I made an employee Facebook page just for my private employees. So any kind of link that they need, any kind of graphic that I've done, anything that they need on Facebook, they can just go over there and get it, pop it, and forget about it. So we don't have to worry about it. So then also I keep, for instance, if you'll see on my Facebook, Instagram, whatever, Twitter, it'll say add to your Amazon wish list and add to your Goodreads mystery shelf. Add to binge books, add to BookBub. So those are the same graphics for every book, except I just switch out the book cover, right? Using BookBrush. And so it doesn't matter so in order to make, it's a system. So it's for like releases, but it also goes up. It's not only for releases, but on social media. So you're going to see that no matter what the first of the month is or the second of the month, whether it falls on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, you're going to see on the first of the month the banner for the new book release. The second, you're going to get a pre-order on Facebook along with the theme that day. So say that the second was a Monday. So you're still going to get subscribe to my newsletter. I put this out, whatever. Then you're going to get that pre-order for every single book every second of the month or the second that it comes out. You're going to get an old interview on the 17th. You're going to get a catch up on the series on the 16th. You're going to get on the 8th, you're going to get the put it on your Amazon wish list. And it's all really the same verbiage. It's just the different picture of the book and the different link. And so all of that I also keep in the file because every month is the same thing. So everybody's like, oh, I got to put something out for, the release. What am I going to write out? That's a lot of brain work when I'd rather be spending that energy writing. So,
and not only that, it's a lot of time. It's a huge time.
It is a huge set of time. And so I had a business coach that's not even in the writing industry. And so I'm like, I'm kind of bored, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, but your income is still going up and, your systems are working. And she said, that's what happens when systems work. We kind of get bored. She goes, don't burn down the house. So she keeps telling me, do not burn down the house. Because also, this also just isn't for Facebook. So everything that's on Facebook is for the pre-order. And then it just goes into the next pre-order. Like it rarely says, hey, this book has been out. Look at this great review. Like people do like 2 or 3 weeks after the book. I don't do that on Facebook. I do that on my blog. So everything that happened on Facebook for the pre-order goes up on my blog because I still have a lot of people that belong to my blog. So it funnels to my blog. So, and then I have Patreon. And so they get every single book, they get a knitting, the knitting pattern for the cover. They get a bead pattern because that beading is so popular right now. The bead pattern for the cover. They get a color sheet. They all get the book in ARC and print. We do one live a month. It's either a, Zoom, but it's on the 19th of each month. So, but what I'm trying to tell you is that I know that on the 1st, they're going to get an audio of me saying, hey, happy, August, this is what's going on. And it's really just an audio memo of me talking to them about what's going on with the books, this, that, and the other, and that they're going to know what charity we gave to on the 2nd. So, and we all vote on the charity, but then I always usually get something from the charity that I like to share. But so that is also scheduled. So they know that on the 1st of each month, they're going to get the audio thing. They know, and it seems like it might be repetitive, but it's not, because I also jump in there with like you do on social media. Like I go live all the time just when I get bored. And so I'll go live in there, or I will pop up a picture of something Rowena did. So it's personal too. But those things are like, they're like things in there, like, they love to see like stuff I've cut, scenes I've cut, things like that. And so Patreon's a whole nother beast. But the point I'm making is that it's a system that I know the main content that needs to be in there. I know the main content that needs to be on Facebook and the main content that needs to be on Instagram. We won't even talk about
TikTok.
But anyways, so every month I have all of those are the same each month. So it's easy for me at the 15th of the month, I have what I call CEO Day. So I literally will sit down on CEO Day and I schedule everything. But I don't hop and pop and go. I schedule everything for that day, all the way up to my newsletters. Not what I've done, because my newsletters are always personal about what I've done, something has happened that week. But the rest of it, I know what books are going on sale. I know that every year. I know like who's going to have Tail Wagging Tuesday and who's going to be Reader of the Week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are like, well, how do you get this Reader of the Week? It's because I went into my group and I did this just kind of stupidly. And I asked, so what is it about a Tonya Kappes book that you like? Really, what I was doing was searching for keywords to put in my advertising, like Southern, charm, blah, blah, blah. And then people were like, oh my God, like, you know, I escape when I read your books, or I love your characters. I feel like I'm at home, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, oh, well, these people need to be showcased. And so not only that, but it gives, you know, some authority to my books, right? And so that is how that came up. So I always will pick 4, because there's 4 weeks, sometimes 5. And so I know, you know, what's going on and who's going to have that. So I always do my, you know, schedule my newsletters, or I can work on my newsletters also that day. Another thing that I do that I started years ago, which I don't have in front of me, and I can grab it if you really want me to. But, you know, I send out postcards every month to readers that are having birthday postcards. And so, yeah, I might send out anywhere from 500 to 3,000 a month. It just depends on, you know, a lot of people are born in August.
Let's count back.
Winter
nights.
So I just did, actually took me 2 days to do those. But I also do that on CEO Day. Is I start right now my postcards for the following month. So they're ready to go out. And so that is something that has really worked, is making those folders. So everything is there. I don't have to do the work anymore. It's there. I pull it up. And they are precious to me. I mean, they are like, you know, gold for me, folders.
Yeah.
And so, you know, another strategy is an ARC team. I don't know where the writers are in your group on that, but even just if you have 10 people, 5 people, you know, why are they on your ARC team? Just to do a review? That doesn't make sense to me. So my ARC team has tasks. And so I do have someone, I came up with this before I even had my assistant that does my ARC team. But they have tasks, and they have to give me a picture of them holding their book. Or they have to send me a picture of their animal sitting next to their book. And so I repurpose all of those pictures, and they go into that file for that month that the book was released, because that next year I'm going to put that book on sale. And so I want, you know, their things. They also have to send me or send my assistant now, but they have to put it on Goodreads, and they have to put it on BookBub, and they have to put a review on Amazon once it goes live. And so I've already got their BookBub, or their BookBub and their Goodreads, because you can do that before the book goes live. And so I will make a graphic, sometimes with them holding their picture with their book, and then their review. And then also I send it to them, or I put it in the group, and my assistant will. But I did all of this up until a few years ago. And they use that because they're like, oh, it's a book of, you know, me holding the book. They love anything about them, right?
Yeah.
And so, or anything with their animal on in the picture. And so I'll put their personal thing on their picture, and they will sit there and promote the book and promote the book and promote the book. And I don't have to do anything, right? But I do. I mean, it's not that I don't, but that is some way that people don't use their ARC team, but they have specific tasks that are done. But I use the pictures myself. My assistant doesn't put those pictures together. I do all of that because I specifically want it a certain way, and I know the way I'm going to repurpose it. And then if I read maybe chapter 1 for YouTube, I take all those pictures as I'm reading chapter 1, and the pictures are just funneling through as I'm reading chapter 1, and it's not even me. And so they're here in chapter 1. And then I'm getting more and more reviewers on YouTube. And then all of a sudden I've gotten over 4,000 watches, and now I'm monetized, and now I'm making money on YouTube. So it ought to kind of all feeds the machine. That's my motto. It all feeds the machine, the repurposed content.
Okay. So just listening to you, I feel overwhelmed. So yeah. So, I mean, I know you write in the mornings, right? So you have dedicated writing time. And then do you work on some of this in the afternoons every single day? Do you have a system for that? Like, okay, on the first I'm doing this, on the second I'm doing this, or, I mean, how do you juggle all of that? Because it is a lot.
It is a lot. So on CEO Day, I also know what book is coming out. And so like for me, I do a book a month, but that's only because I'm 3 books ahead. I wasn't like that before. But if you just do one book every 2 months, 3 months, a year, whatever, you have time to put together those graphics. I mean, it's easy.
You would think. You would think.
But to me, it's my job. It's my business. I'm it. This is our income, my family income. So I treat it as a job, even though we're at home. So I make sure I have the time. I make sure that, if I'm going on a family vacation, then I'm going to plan that. If I'm going to be the CEO of my company, I have to boss up and do the things, right? So I know the most important is the writing. Okay. So every morning, I make sure I do writing sprints for 2 hours. And as long as I can get 2,500 words in, that 2 hours, it might be more, it might be 5,000, depends on how it's going that day. But then I'm great. I'm happy. The world is wonderful, because I know that's what moves the needle for me. And it's not the new releases, it's the backlist, which is a whole nother topic. But as far as my systems go, I have to stay in that regimented thing. So I'm usually finished writing by noon. And then I might have, people are like, oh, what about, doctor's appointments? Okay. But generally, how many doctor's appointments do you have? You have one every day? No.
Right.
So I make sure that all my doctor appointments are generally in June or July, because I've got the least amount of clothes on. So I don't have to weigh in all those big clunky boots, right? All of my stuff. Like I have my, my dentists are in June, and then again in January. But all of any kind of medical appointment I need, like a mammogram, gynecologist, my annual, whatever it is all set on one day in June. I try to hit them all in one day, or at least in 1 week. So I know that, it's not going to really interrupt my job. But it wouldn't be any different than having another job where you had to take off for the time being, right? You're still going to go do your job, but then you got to take off to go do that.
Yeah. So you have CEO Day, you have medical week.
That's right. And so then in the afternoon is when I do put on the business hat. And it's all a business. Even when I sit down to write, it's a business. And so I will, and so say for instance, CEO Day is CEO Day, and I try to schedule all of it, right? But then something happens to where I'm on your thing with you and Diane that I was on. So of course I want to make sure that I schedule a post for that, or I might have a takeover that day or that week. I always say, can you please let me be admin? So that might be something like that. Also, every Friday I sit down and look at my ads and dig into that part of it.
Oh my gosh. Forgot about ads.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing, right?
That's a whole nother thing. Oh, man.
So, and I have a system with my ads, right? But that's too much to go into.
Well, that'll be a separate chat sometime.
Yeah. So, but in the afternoon, like I have friends that they have like theme days, that they on business, but I don't necessarily do that. So, sometimes my day is spent. So more importantly than Facebook or social media is the Patreon group. Like I love my Patreon group, and they're paying to be there, right?
How many people do you have there?
A couple hundred. Yeah. And so they're paying to be there. So what I do is in the afternoon, I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this second story. So in the afternoon, I call it slow hustling with a cup of coffee, and I slow hustle my second story and put it up for them. And
yeah, no, I remember we were chatting one time, just texting, and you were like, hang on, I have to write 1,000 words or something. And I was like, okay, and then you're back, what, half an hour later, and like, okay, I'm done.
It's a great 1,000 words. I mean, they just get thrown up at their 1,000 words, and they move the plot forward and the murder forward. And my readers like, oh my God, the readers in Patreon, my Patreon readers, they love it. And, some of them will send me the mistakes. I'm like, oh, you really don't have to. But if you do, I love it. But if they're going to be caught when it eventually goes to be a book. Yeah. But I know that right now, that's what I focus on in the afternoon, because I've already scheduled everything for Facebook. Mm-hmm. And it's there, and those kind of things. So I don't have to worry about that when you schedule it out a month in advance, because it's always going to work. And when my mom had her car accident and I went home for those 3 months, if I would have not had these systems in place and things already scheduled, I wouldn't have probably had an income. You know what I mean? I would have had an income, but not, it would have been a long process to try. It would have been very stressful trying to stay on social media and those kind of things. Yeah. But I was able to pop in and say, some of the lives are not going to happen because this happened. I've got to be at home, but I'll still be around. I'll still be on here. And so, my business didn't even skip a beat with my systems in place. Mm-hmm. And so that's when my business coach said, back 4 months ago, don't burn it down. It's work. Look what happened. You had a tragedy after another tragedy. And, then my dad got sick within this whole span of 10 months. And then my 3 kids were in car wrecks and, COVID and all that good stuff, that's not for my systems. And now you're making me love my systems all over.
Yeah, I know. I'm so impressed.
Don't burn it down. And I'm like, I'm so bored. But then I don't also let my self-care get lost. So for instance, I'm very regimented, so I do jazzercise at home every morning because they close down the studio. I still go to Weight Watchers every Wednesday at noon.
Do you really?
Yeah, every Wednesday at noon. I'm still there. And so
lifetime member, right?
Yeah, lifetime member, 14 years. I still get those. Why are you here? And I'm like, I'm still a struggle, but all of those same routines. Mm-hmm. It's just in my routine, and I make time for myself. Like I take my walks daily. I go out and feed. Now it looks a little different because we moved to the property, but I'll get up in the morning and go outside and say grateful things and walk around my pond and feed the fish that are in it. Mm-hmm. And try to really take care of my mental health. Make sure that Eddie and I are done at a certain time of the day. I still cook supper every night. So some people call it dinner. We call it supper.
Call it tea.
What do you call it?
The British call it tea.
Yeah. So, and dinner is noon around here. We call lunch dinner, and then we have supper. But so we make sure that we have, now that we work together, you got to stop and have your downtime. It's like having kids, you stop to have your kids, although my kids are grown and out of the house like yours. Mm-hmm. And we work at home. I could be working 24/7.
Yeah, but it's really easy to do. And especially if you don't, I struggle with this with separation in the house, because it's so easy to sit on the chair with the laptop. But I do have an office, and I am so much more productive when I come into my office, but it's so easy to sit in that chair, and then, you're in that same room all day long and all night long. And if Carlos, my husband, is out, then it's easy to keep working. I forget what I used to do before I wrote to pass the time,
Right. And I will, my friends all know that I work. And so we might go meet for a lunch or go for a walk or something like that. But Atomic Habits. Have you read Atomic Habits yet?
I have. No, I haven't. I haven't finished reading it.
So, he talks about working from home, which after I read his book, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so right. Because I would go on the kitchen table. I would sit on the couch. So a lot of times I write in my camper, my travel trailer, which is parked out here, which we do use, or in my office. But I was starting to mix home and work.
Yeah.
And so that's not a very good habit to get into, because then it's hard to, because then when I walk in my kitchen, I'm like, oh, I don't want to eat. I want to write, or I don't want to cook. I want to work. And so he talks about making sure you have that designated space from home. And so that is what I do. So I make sure I have designated space from home. I also take care of myself by continuing education classes. Most of them are on mindset, things like that, business classes, really nothing with writing as much anymore. But I've always, the only thing I've not really found is a group of writers to go on trips with and things like that.
Girl, you just need to let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I had a local group, and then I made the USA Today bestsellers list, and one of them got super, super upset. And she had written paranormal and cozies, and I had at the time was writing paranormal cozies, and she said, I'm afraid that you're going to steal my material. And we had the same editor, and she wrote me a Dear John letter.
Oh my
and I was like, oh my gosh. And so I immediately called her, and I was like, please don't do this. I'll quit writing. I told this person, I'll quit writing. I just want your friendship. And she's like, I knew you'd do this, but no, I just can't handle the success.
I think that's a real thing. It's the jealousy within the field for anybody that experiences that success it's hard. It's hard for people.
Yeah. I mean, so much so that there was another really good friend of mine, Duffy Brown, who does live here. She called and she said, what did you do to this author? And I'm like, what do you mean? And at the time they had a big blog, and it's not out anymore. And she's like, well, they're looking for new people, and I suggested you. And one said, oh no, she steals content from such and such author. So this author was bad mouthing me.
Oh wow.
And I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was really difficult. So that's when I just kind of started cocooning, honing down, and building up, my own brand, and working on these systems, and trying to not be on Facebook, because I didn't want to hear all that. I didn't want to see all the negativity. So it just all kind of like going back to your initial question 20 minutes ago, it all kind of goes down to some things that I've learned, some things that I've been through, some of my own things, and things that have worked for others, and things that haven't. So I have learned to look to the romance community for anything that's up and coming. Cozy is so far behind the times when it comes to new ways of doing things, that I literally look at romance writers and what they're doing, and kind of just tweak it to cozy mystery. There's a romance writer that I love to watch by the name of Megan Quinn, and she writes steamy romance, but she does the best Instagram marketing and stories. And so she does like the best little stories for releases. And I'm like, I could totally do that. And it's not like she probably got it from somewhere else. But so now I have the same kind of template for every book that comes out on Instagram that I can use. And so and it goes into that July folder for that book. So, things can, get repurposed. So it's just kind of like that. But for systems, as far as other writers, I don't do other writer groups, just because I don't want to. I'm still hurt after. I mean, it's been years since that happened, so I'm still hurt after all these years that it's really not been good for me to. So I'm kind of leery when I go into other groups and things like that. But I still have never found that good group of cozy writers I just want to be able to go and hang out with, and be like, oh yeah, let's talk and let's write, and all that kind of fun stuff. So that system hasn't worked for me, but there are a lot of writers that have been able, like with you and Diane, y'all have been able to find your groove, which is so great. And I'm jealous of. I wish I had that.
It's easy because we live a mile and a half apart, you know.
Well, so did I with this other girl. Well,
and we're at the same place in our careers. Neither one of us have, you know, had that sort of skyrocket success, you know. But we have a really solid friendship too. But yeah, I mean, I get it. I get how difficult it is to see somebody else succeed when you think I'm just as good, right? And I write just as great as that person. Why can't I do it? You know, I mean, I think that's human nature to feel that jealousy, but it's a shame that it impinges on the friendship.
Oh, I mean, I was like, I said, I'll quit writing. Like, I just wanted the friendship, right? Because that meant so much more to me than the writing. But I'm glad that she said, no, forget it. Because, you know, I don't know, you know, where I'd be at this time. But, and I have no idea what even this person's up to nowadays. But anyway, so that is part of like that whole, you know, everything that I do for my business in the afternoon is, you know, for my reader, you know, what can I do to do something for my reader today? Or, but if there's nothing, but if you think about it, interestingly, like if you really sat down to think about it, and really how I got to the CEO day was that my business partner or my business manager, or whatever she want to call her, she's like, well, you need to write down what you do every day. And like after you get done writing, so I'd find myself on social media, like, oh, I need to schedule something for this day. I need to schedule. So every day I was on social media scheduling something. And she's like, well, why if you just took one day and scheduled it all? And then what do you do the rest of the afternoons? You can go on your nature hikes. You know, you could be traveling and you could write in the morning and then your social media is done. So you could be out, you know, your husband and you can enjoy your camper and you could be traveling, or you can go see one of your kids. You can go out to lunch. Or, you know, you can continue to write if you want to. So really, what else would we be doing in the afternoon?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a great way to look at it.
So, yeah. So, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm doing the thing that's going to feed the machine, you know, in the morning, the main thing. So, you know, so the arc, you know, my arcs, so another thing that I do is, if you have a book out, I did an online book signing, which was a lot of fun. You know,
I've seen you do those. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of goes also into my marketing systems. So now every 6 months, because I always plan my book releases in quarters, right? I always do the quarters. And so I know that, you know, people like to get books for Christmas presents, and especially became super popular during the shutdown because people weren't going to, you know,
bookstores and
stores and things like that. So I just simply put it up online in an online form and put it on my newsletter and say, I'm going to have book signing. It's online. And I always include the shipping, which is media mail. But then, you know, it just, you know, if you offer like something else, like generally during the winter time, I offer like a little book bag. So it'll be a little bit more than media mail. Anyway, so what happened is that I schedule those every 6 months. And I literally sit in my camper with their book and say, hey, Misa, you know, this is our Melissa. What are we, Winnie? What are we going by? You know, this is for you. And I sign it and I show it to them. And then, but I've already made the envelope. So maybe that's something I do, you know, in the afternoon, but I always make the envelope. So as soon as I sign it, it goes right in that envelope. And the next day it's going to the post office. And I have stamps.com at home. Which is a discount for us. That's easy to do. And so it's already stamped and ready to go. So, you know, I make it as much easiest as possible as it can be.
But part of that, I think part of that success for you with those types of tasks is you're going back to your gift of the gab, right? You can sit there on live, FaceTime Live or Zoom or whatever, and just chat with people in the chat, you know, and it's very easy for you. That is so hard for me to do. So you have to also find what works for you, because I can't force that, right? It wouldn't be authentic. It would be like, it would just be challenging. So you have to find something that works for you.
Right. Right. And so that's why I think that a lot of times, so, you know, sometimes like reading one chapter of your book, like I always call it the chapter 1. And so I read chapter 1 to myself on video. And then I'm like, hey, welcome back to chapter 1. This week we're going to read blah, 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 blah. And I just sit there and read chapter 1 and I'm done. And then I'm like, okay, that can go up on my blog. That can go in my newsletter. That can go on YouTube. That can go on Facebook. At the time it was Instagram TV, which I don't think they have that anymore.
No, they don't have it anymore.
And so, you know, all those things are just extra content that you can do. And so now what I've done is I read chapter 1 before the book comes out. So, you know, they're hearing me do it. They're da, 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 da. And so whenever I put that in my newsletter, I mean, 78% of my newsletter is not on social media. 78%. So a lot of my readers, so whenever I put chapter 1 on my newsletter, it shoots up. I mean, my sales, pre-orders. As a matter of fact, going back to my mom's accident, I had left the hospital to go get food. And I'm like, I just needed to get out of the hospital. So I went to Panera Bread. And I'm standing there in line, and this lady goes, oh my gosh, how is your mother? And I said, oh, thank you for asking. And I tell her all the stuff. And I'm like, you go to, because I'm thinking she goes to church with my mom, you know, because she looked like somebody would go to church with my mom for some reason. I go, oh, are you my mom's Sunday school? And she's like, no, I'm on your newsletter. And I went, oh my God. You know, I was like, oh my gosh. I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And she's like, no, no, no. And she's like, I need to introduce you to my husband. And so her husband is sitting there eating Panera, and he's like, oh, he had COVID, and I'm in his room. They let me stay in there, this, that, and the other. And I was reading your book and laughing. And he's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm laughing. And he's like, I thought you were reading a murder mystery. She's like, oh, it is, but it's hysterical. So, you know, she goes, I joined your newsletter, and I'm on social media, but my most favorite thing that you do is read chapter 1. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And she's like, I just don't do social media. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then like 2 days later, she paid for a full year of Patreon. So now she's a Patreon member. So she's in there. And so you know, I was like, oh my gosh, did it resonate? So that's when I mean, that was just, you know, I've been doing chapter 1 for years, but never heard that I never paid attention to if it moved the needle until she said that. And then I went back and looked at clicks and like, oh, okay. And looked at book sales that day for that particular book and was super interested in that. So I knew that video was going to be super taken off. So if you're not comfortable live, you really need to try to do something with video that's not live.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do for Writer Spark. That's what this is all about. It's much easier, and I've learned how to edit and all of that stuff. I haven't really made that crossover to my writing career, but guess what I'm doing tomorrow? Reading chapter 1.
Oh, you should. I tell people all the time that you should do that. So that is part of my book system. So for every book, I have a checklist. I do what's called a book Bible. And so as I'm writing the book, I keep a separate document. And in that document is all the graphics for that particular book that I made, the ones I was telling you about, add your Amazon wish list, blah, blah, blah. You know, every link that's going to need for that book. Also, I will be like, oh, that's a really good sneak peek when I'm writing. And it's not been edited, but that's okay because I can edit it later. So, but I'll forget it if I don't. So as I'm writing it, I think sneak peek. So I copy and highlight what I just wrote, go over to that document, type sneak peek, put in the sneak peek. And I have like 2 or 3 sneak peeks. And then I have also a task, like everything I need to do for the book release, which that includes the first chapter. So all of those things get done, right? And it's still a template that I recreate for each book. So as I'm writing the book. And so then I can, again, have that there. So when I go back to my systems, that on whatever day it is that I put in a like, so for instance, teaser or sneak peek happens on the 4th and the 11th of each month. So I don't have to go in and search for that, but I can go ahead and copy and paste it and schedule it. So it's part of that system that I did on my CEO day. So all of my systems kind of work together to create the system for all the social media. And so also I can put just a real little, so I don't know, do you know how to embed a link? Like if you were to go to Goodreads, and so to do your Goodreads update, you don't have to like, you want to update like 50% reading, and then where you can comment, you can put a graphic there.
Yes.
You just have to sew the image. And so, I update that every week, and it's like in the image, it'll say, have the sneak peek words in there. So it's not taking up any of the characters that you can have on there. So it might be part of that sneak peek. So that's a graphic that's made, for Goodreads. And also we'll put it on my blog, which my blog is, RSS into my Goodreads and to my Amazon page. So whenever you go to my Amazon page, you're going to see the latest, blog post, which is, something. And then on Goodreads, it also funnels back to my blog. So it all just kind of works together in repurposed content. That's my main thing, is repurpose, repurpose, repurpose. And then just to continue to do the same things each month for each launch. That's, you don't have to create the thing. And I would love to say that Facebook parties and stuff work still, but I just don't feel like I feel like I'm just talking to the same crowd on Facebook parties. So I really don't do those. But this is what we're getting to with this is people love book clubs. They love book clubs, and they don't, some people, the cozy mystery, although I've seen a shift over the last few years in my demographic. My demographic has gotten 30s. Because again, going back to the pandemic, people were moving home. Young girls are moving home or moving in with their parents again, or just having that little tiny group of interaction with their family. That I saw my demographic change from the 45 and up to 30s to up, because I was getting messages. Oh my God, my mom, we've been swapping books, and your series is like Schitt's Creek set in a campground. My mom loves Schitt's Creek, because mom, most people over the age of 45 weren't watching Schitt's Creek. It was younger. So now a lot of my reviews from these younger people are like, oh my God, Schitt's Creek in a campground. You won't believe it. Hilarious. Blah, 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 blah. There's a mystery. And so I'm like, oh my God, you're right. It is kind of like that. And so, I started seeing my demographic go, so it started going skew. So they were like, oh, they started following me everywhere, and were like, oh, you have a book club? And I'm like, yeah. And so every month, we always have a book club for the previous book that I had released. And so, what happens is that now I have somebody that runs those, but I'm in there. So they come up with those questions. So now I've gotten, we'll just use that camper series, 26 book club questions. So now all the books are getting reformatted with book club questions at the end of each book. So it's just getting repurposed and repurposed.
So adding book clubs, that's a whole nother thing that you do.
A whole nother system.
Yeah. Wow.
So under the umbrella of Tonya Kappes books. Right.
Well, it's no wonder you need 3 assistants and Eddie in the payroll.
Yeah. And but even my newsletters all have a system, right? So another thing is I release at the end of each month. I release a book on a Thursday. It can be every other month, every 6 months or whatever, but I specifically release on a Thursday before the end of the month. And that's because I'm in KU. And so I have all my pre-orders that bam, that month's income. And then all the page reads come the next month. So I never have a down month. All my months are pretty boop, 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 or whatever it is, right? And then that book just automatically, as soon as that book's put out, I'm not even thinking about promoting it. It goes to my backlist. So I'm just looking at the next book and promoting it.
Yeah.
And so I did notice that every Friday my income would drop a little. But the other 6 days, it was pretty steady. I'm like, why is that dropping? Right. And so I'm like, what can I do to make my income stay steady, throughout the week when there's not a book release? And so I'm like, oh, newsletter. Every time I put out a newsletter, I get an increase. But what can I do with my newsletter because I put out a newsletter weekly. And I'm like, and there's not a whole call to action to every week. My cat has a very popular article in there that everybody's like, oh, they always comment back to her, or their animal will write her back, which is fun. But I'm like, oh, a book sale. And, I'm in KU, and you can put a book on sale, and through their KU countdown or unlimited, whatever it is. And you still make the same amount of money as if it wasn't. Right. Yeah. So I'm like, today only. And so every Friday, guess what? They're going to get a today only book sale. And so my income, boom, went right back to where it was.
Well, it helps too that you have how many books? 80 something books now? Or what are you at?
So I think it's like 78 today.
Yeah. So that's a whole lot of backlist.
Yes.
So.
But, yeah. And so that is, a way for me to reach them again.
Yeah.
So, but I would not have ever been able to get to this backlist if I wasn't running it like a business and a job and writing every day.
Yeah.
And, doing it every day. And again, we could go into craft and things like that, because I don't believe in writer's block. But we won't. But for the sake of that,
that's another day.
That's a whole other thing. People was like, oh, well, how can you write that? I couldn't write that. I can't figure out my story. Well, and to me, I'm not saying I don't get stuck when I'm writing, but I'm like, oh, something's not happening right. So I might get up, go walk around, which I do get up every 25 minutes at least to walk around. But I might go back through what I just read, and I'm like, oh, well, that's not, and then something just isn't right with your writing. Right. When I get stuck.
I think that's generally the case.
Yeah. So I'm not saying things don't happen every day, but everything is put in place to when something does happen, I can pivot and everything else can run smoothly. But yeah, it's all the systems that I have in place, that I do. So for instance, I even have a planner. My planners are so important. So every Sunday I'll sit down at the beginning of the week. Now I used to do stickers and all that kind of stuff, but I don't do any of that now. But now I just sat down at Sunday. I don't work on Sundays, except for looking at the planner. And then I'll look at my planner and I'm like, okay, I've got this coming up, this coming up, this coming up. And I want to make sure that I've got everything, in place. So I know that at such and such time, I'm going to be talking to Misa, right? So at this time that day, I'm not going to be writing to the Patreon. I'm not going to be doing whatever it is task I might need to do.
Blocked out, yeah.
So totally blocked out. And so just like, your chapter ones, it might take me 20 minutes to read a chapter 1, but I'm going to take that hour and I'm going to read a chapter 1 of another book too. So in a few weeks, that chapter 1 can come out. So time blocking in my planner is big. So just like the time blocking for my CEO day is big.
And then it's the commitment to that.
Yeah.
Like the regiment that you have of getting up and doing exercise and committing to the writing, and then CEO day, but you have to really be committed to, okay, this is in my planner. This is what I'm doing. which
Right.
is hard for some people too.
It is hard for people, but I also know that if I don't do it, then who's going to put food on the table?
Right.
Not that not that that is, but even before, like Eddie just started working for me just a few weeks ago. So even before that, I'm still thinking who's going to put food on the table, even though he's had his job for 35 years,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I knew there was going to be food on the table, but I'm just saying that, I take my job serious and, it's a job. And so sometimes, if people have the freedom not to have to do this as a job, then why are you doing it? I'm just teasing. I'm teasing. No, but I love it. I mean, I couldn't imagine not writing. Like I'm passionate about when I talk to readers about my books, I'm passionate about it. And I love the job part of it, the entrepreneurial part.
Well, and you've come to a point in your career where, I mean, it's taken time to develop all of this, because I remember back in the day where you would be at Jack's whatever basketball practice or something and sitting at a tree writing. You're like, oh yeah, I wrote for an hour and a half or in the car while he was at practice, so
Yeah,
you have to evolve as your life changes and
right,
the kids grow up, and
right,
you have more books now,
correct.
and you develop those processes for
And we
whatever
all
works for you.
start with one book,
Right. Yeah.
and even if the one book, you can take snippets, you can still read the chapter one, you can do all the things on social media, whatever social media you like. And people say, oh, I hate social media. I hate to tell you, you have to be somewhere on social media nowadays.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you just have to be you just got to make peace with that. But making peace with it is maybe scheduling it, so you don't have to be on there all the time. And I'm not on there all the time, but to make peace with that, you have to be. But you can schedule, really fun posts. For instance, it doesn't even have to be about your book, but what's the theme of your book? If you're a knitter, put up some knitting, funny something or other. Or, like for me, I have funny, camping things, or I put camping hacks and recipes in my books. I might send them to a site that might have, a camping hack, because a lot of people are following me that love camping,
Right.
So then I have the Killer Coffee series. It's not all about camping. I'm just talking about that just because that happens to be what I'm writing in right now. I'm thinking about it. But like, the Killer Coffee series, people love to, coffee mostly, or tea or whatever. So I might put up like, something, oh, benefits of coffee, besides my coffee post every day, so it's something different. So now also something I've incorporated that has just kind of taken off is every morning I take a video, a 30-second video of my coffee. And I'm like, good morning. And then I pan around to see the view. Then I'm panning back to my coffee and say, have a good day. And that goes up. And people are like crazy. And if I don't do it a day, they're like, where's the coffee video?
Yeah.
And maybe that's not selling books, but it's enough to get people's attention to be like, oh, who is this person? Or what are they doing? And,
well, but it is because it's growing your community. That's why you have 17,000 people, on your Facebook page, and who knows how many thousands in your newsletter list, because that's what you're doing, is building community.
And people say, oh my gosh, I like you as a person. I'm going to try your book.
Right.
Exactly. And I'm honest with them. I'm like, my books have mistakes probably. I do have a professional editing service, that edit it 3 times, as well as a couple hundred ARC readers. But, I'm not going to be that book that you pick up and like, oh, that changed my life. I'm going to help you escape. I'm going to let you laugh, even though it's a murder. I always say it's a smidgen of homicide with, I'll say I'm Southern hospitality with a smidgen of homicide. Smidgen, maybe 1 or 2 bodies. Anything other than that, I consider a thriller, and I do not write thrillers. So, you're just going to get, that kind of thing. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not perfect. My books aren't perfect. So, don't email me and tell me that they're a mistake, because I'm not going to read the email.
Yeah.
I love you, but, so, I don't take myself too serious. So like I said, when I know when I can sit down and put these systems into place, that, oh my God, I know something's going to happen. I know that at 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm going to drink a cup of coffee. I'm going to sit down and watch Days of Our Lives. I know that that's going to happen. I'm not perfect. And although I'm like, oh, I'm going to write, during Days of Our Lives and I'll watch it tonight. I like to watch it live. So I'm just saying that, I know that life happens. And, you know, I have built the systems to where when life happens, I'm like, okay, life happens. I'm not going to get upset about it. You know,
the whole thing doesn't fall apart
it
because,
doesn't fall to the ground. Right.
yeah.
And so that's mainly what I felt like, you know, writers need to have systems in place. So, you know, to have the freedom of not having to be on social media. I mean, when you've got a monthly file that you can pull from every year, no matter what social media comes, the content's there. You might just have to tweak it a little bit to be on that content, you know, be on that platform. You know, I think that that's made it so much easier for me and relieves me and not gives me anxiety to be on the social media.
Yeah. Or feel like you're always a step behind, always playing catch up.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I was getting a phone call and I clicked it. I don't know if it interrupted that, but anyways. And so, you know, it's just, you have to be flexible, but you have to be committed, you know, when you work from home, because, you know, it is a job.
Yeah. Just like if you were reporting to a boss, you know, it's you're the boss, though. You're the CEO. You've got to report to or be accountable to.
Right. And I make it with my assistants that it's so easy to get the information that, you know, I do touch base with them once a week because I feel like that's important, you know. But I trust them so much that if I didn't talk to them every week, I'm like, they've got this, you know, they've got it. They've got everything at their fingertips. So they're not missing something. To where if I was to be like, I can't be on social media, then they can be I mean, they're not admin on my author page because I do all of that. Because I think it's important. I don't think that my assistant Karen could go on there and be like, hey, y'all, she's Canadian. You know, I don't think she could write a post as me. Right.
Yeah.
So
and your readers want to know that they are engaging with you too.
Right. Right. So, yeah. So, you know, and then people are like, okay, well, when do you get on social media to, you know, comment back or whatever? I do get on at night. Eddie likes to watch MASH. So when he's watching MASH, I'll get on and I only go to my stuff and comment for, you know, the half hour or whatever it is. And then I'm off. I don't get lost in other people's things and other people's stuff. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even have a personal page where people could be friends with me, except for my family for years. And my mom, my Facebook page, my Facebook author page, because the author page is separate from the other Facebook. It's a separate thing. My Instagram, everything I have on social media is my mom's password because my mom gets on my social media because she won't have her own. I'm like, Mom, let's get your own. So when she was in the hospital for those many weeks, I wasn't on that page and I didn't have any friends on that page. So I would see her just sitting there in the hospital with her iPad, just kind of home humming, you know, just kind of picking. And I said, oh my God, I need to get back on the personal page with all my relatives. So she has something to do. So just in the past, you know, few months, I've invited my cousins and everything back on the personal page. But I'm like, do not get on, you know, that other side of the page. So I really just stay on the author page.
Yeah. Same.
So, yeah. So, and that's where, you know, unfortunately, I have to be because that's where my readers that are on social media are at. Even though I've seen that swing, what I've noticed is that the swing that I've seen are from the younger girls that are book bloggers, podcasters, those kind of rabid readers. So it's interesting.
So much great information. Thank you so much. This has been fun.
I mean, I know I have other strategic systems, but I felt like maybe social media is where people feel like they have to be all the time. And if you can just knock one of the strategies out, you know, just one post a day is enough. But
yeah, I think it's figuring out what works for you and then taking baby steps, you know,
right,
and then building as you feel like you're able to, and you're able to commit to those steps.
right.
So you definitely have me thinking. So
I hope so.
yeah, for sure.
Really do. I hope so. I mean, I know. I mean, gosh, I just want so many. Because people are always like, "Oh my gosh, you can cut all this out." But people are like, "Oh, Tonya, you need to have a class on marketing," and I'm like, oh, oh, and I just don't have that desire,
Yeah.
to do that. And then I thought, oh, I do have some where, they are videotaped because, uh, of course, I had all this stuff again during the pandemic that I videotaped and like, okay, this is what y'all need to be doing, blah, blah. And I do have a whole one on where I share screen and show my folders. They're always in the back of my head that I keep back there, but I don't think I'd ever do anything with them,
Yeah. Well, that just takes away from your writing and everything
Right.
else that you do,
Well, and
and you have a business.
that's why I quit, teaching a lot of the classes and going to classes and teaching the marketing and all that because that just wasn't making the money. And I thought, am I a teacher still or am I a writer?
Yeah.
And so that's why I went hardcore to the writing and stopped because I knew I wanted to make a living doing what I was passionate about. Because if I was still passionate about teaching, I'd still be a teacher.
Yeah. And see, and I struggle, because I do love teaching and, that's an important thing to me, which is why I have Writer Spark Academy, but I'm also a writer first and foremost. And I love that. So it is a balancing act for sure.
Yeah. So it's a totally different balancing act for you,
Yeah. I need
so
to
for
clone
you,
myself.
if you were to create systems, I would definitely be doing, theme days where in the morning you write or in the afternoon you write, whichever time you write the best at night, whatever. But then you have to refill that creative well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, how many days a week can you write? And then on those off days, would you be able to work on your classes?
Yeah. Yeah. Because like today, I didn't pre-plan my newsletter. So I had to do yesterday or Tuesday, it was the Writer Spark newsletter. Today it was my actual newsletter. There went my whole entire morning doing that sort of thing because I didn't plan it ahead. So yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm doing. What?
Why didn't you plan it ahead? What are you doing?
It's my brain does not actually work that way. It's hard. Like I have to really commit to it. But you have me convinced. So we're going to California Tuesday. Carlos's dad's turning 90, and so I can work on some of that on the trip. And then when I get back, I won't have a book that I'm writing. Hopefully, it'll be done. And then I'm gonna organize my Dropbox files and all of that sort of thing. And
so for me, like when we go on our airplane next week to see Jack, I can't write on an airplane, but I sure can plan on an airplane.
Yeah.
And I sure can do things on an airplane that, that will help the other parts of the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just got to find those times, know.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, stick around for a second. Thank you again, Tonya, for being here. So much great information, and we will have you back again, definitely, to have a different craft chat. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we'll see you later.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.